When you begin to draw and sketch out your food, make sure you think about the placement of your items to fill your composition, and also think about the size compared to the size of your paper. You notice I kind of use my hands as guides to kind of estimate where and how big I want something that I'm drawing. I know it is difficult to see what I'm actually drawing, and that is because you are supposed to draw lightly, so that way you can erase and fix any mistakes as you draw. Keep in mind that this is going to be an acrylic painting. We don't need a lot of detail in our sketch. You're just kind of drawing out the big basic shapes, area of where each thing is going to be located. Now it is time to begin with a base layer of paint on your picture. Right now, it doesn't really matter what order you paint items in. Just start with whatever you already know, whatever will make it easier for you to begin. When we do our next layers, the order will matter, but this one isn't a problem. Choose the easiest option for you. A base layer does not mean that it is just one simple color. You can always use your shadow colors and highlights to help mark in what area you need. Remember to use the techniques that we practiced before starting. Make sure you are working while your paint is wet when you're trying to blend colors together. You can double load your brush by putting two different colors, one on basically each corner of your brush and painting like that as well. After we have the base layer of our food/objects that are in your picture, we are now going to move on to the background. For mine, I am looking down onto my picture like a bird's eye view, so I'm going to see just the flat table. I'm adding a lot of texture, a lot of different shades and colors to it using the impressionism technique, where I'm kind of using the side of my brush to more so tap the paint on and not overblend it. Feel free that when you do your background, it's going to be different techniques and different angles. Like you might have a view from like the side, and so there you would make sure you have your horizon line where either the sky meets the ground or the wall meets the table/floor that your object is sitting on. Let's zoom in here so you can see more of how I am doing this impressionism technique. You can see that I kind of turn my paintbrush like and flip my hand because I'm using the side of the paintbrush. This is a flat paintbrush. I first go in with my base color where I am using a dark blue. Then I add in my shadow of a black color, and then I also go in and add white. The key is to not overblend those colors together. This is just one way you can make a background. Again, there are different views that you can see this from. The one I am showing you is a bird's eye view, so I'm looking down on top of my item. You can also see it at eye level, like the item is right there in front of your face. You don't have to look down or up, or at a 45-degree angle. At the two latter ones that I just mentioned, you would probably see the table or ground that that item is sitting on, and then you would see a line before it transfers to the wall. So make sure you keep that in mind. Nothing should just be one solid color. Everything has some sort of gradient to it where it goes from one shade or one color to the next, nice and smooth. Before you begin to paint, remember to put all of the paint onto your plate including all the colors you might need. So always look at your picture, your reference photo, to see what those colors might be. Some of them might surprise you and it's not what you're expecting. Like when I look at the picture of this pan, I can see greens, yellows, oranges, blues, and some of the highlight parts. So really pay attention and don't be afraid to exaggerate the colors that you see. That will make for a more interesting photo when you're done. As I begin to paint this second layer, I am making sure that I am keeping this, like the edges, clean and crisp. It's not looking messy. So I'm being more careful this time around, really making sure there is a lot of contrast in your artwork. Remember, contrast is the difference between the light and the darks in your picture. So I'm really making sure this black stands out, which is why we do this in layers. And then I'm also making sure that I zoom in close and really pay attention to my reference photo to see, are there little highlights here? Do I need to put a little bit there? It may be just the tiniest little bit, but that can make a big difference in making your artwork stand out. The best advice I can give you when you are trying to do an acrylic painting is to actually know what you're doing and work quickly. Because if you're trying to get something to blend in a gradient, which is a slow change from those colors or from a light to a dark, you need to do it while the paint is still wet. So study your reference photo, have your paints ready to go before you actually begin painting, so you're not wasting time doing those little things as you're trying to paint. Now, I just mentioned this about the exaggerating of your colors. So as you look here at my reference photo, I was able to see a lot of these colors. Some of them I'm going to apply more of it to my artwork than what you actually see in your reference photo, which is what's going to make it look better when I'm finished. Okay. Same tip applies here. Working while the paint is still wet is the best thing you can do. So I'm kind of going in an order in which I can apply this color and then blend it together with the next one while it's still wet. So even here, I'm now going through and I'm starting to add the black, so that way it'll be a smoother transition into that darker shade later. We did all this kind of practice in our notes beforehand, so that way you should have some experience with this before you actually start your official painting. It is important to notice that I am painting sections at a time. I'm finding areas where it's going to be okay if the paint dries before I'm able to blend it, because I'm going to have to go back and do this section again later anyways. So I'm kind of painting this inside rim of this pan right now before I focus on the inside bottom part of the pan, because it won't matter later as I have to blend it together. So this was the second layer that I am painting on this pan. The first one was the base layer, and the second one was really establishing the colors and gradients and all that. Now what you're going to do is a third layer on top of that, and this time you're focusing more on the texture and small details that you could see in your picture. Now mine is a picture of a frying pan with eggs on it, so there are a lot of oil, so like shiny bubbles and things like that. So now I've transitioned to my little detail brush, and I'm kind of going in and marking all the highlights of those bubbles first, and then I will follow up with the dark shadows of those bubbles. And then in my photo, I want to exaggerate the shiny part, so I'm also going to kind of go through with a light blue color to add a little shine to the top of each of those grease oil bubbles. After I have the inside part of my pan painted, I am now moving on to the handle. Remember all those techniques that we practiced in our sketchbook before to create different textures. You have dry brush, you can use the impressionism technique, you can use a gradient if it's smooth. So keep all that in mind and choose the one that fits yours best. And if you want to make something up, go for it. Just make sure that you have a lot of texture. Now on this handle, let's zoom in here. Now that you can see what I'm doing, I'm kind of using more of the impressionism technique again because it looked really rough and kind of bumpy, and I really want all those different highlights and shadows and tones and all that to show up. So I'm kind of making sure I'm not over blending. That is the key technique with this, is you do not want to mix it too much because you want all those different shades to show up. Based off of my reference photo, I'm also going to continue this technique onto the top rim of the pan because frying pans usually are very coated and thick and crusty. Now we're going to kind of start repeating those steps with the rest of the items in our picture. So I'm again starting, base layer is already done, and now I'm doing a second layer on my eggs, really focusing on the shadows, the highlights, and the tones that I want to show up there. Then I will go into adding the texture that I see on my eggs in my reference photo. Now, the most important part of this step here is that you are actually now going in order. The order you paint in matters, so that way it can make certain things easier for you. So for instance, if I had started with painting this egg and really getting all those nice edges clean and crisp and looking really nice on my layer 2, but then I had to go and paint the pan, which is technically behind those eggs, I might accidentally paint the black of the pan on the egg. And then I gotta restart the egg all over again. So when you're painting, after your base layer, you want to make sure that you kind of work your way from the back of your picture forward. So I started, after my base layer was done, I started by painting the background, got that all settled so I didn't have to worry about if I accidentally crossed over onto any of my objects. After the background, then I moved on to the next item forward, which for me was the pan. Then after that, I'm going to work on the eggs, both cracked eggs that are on the pan and the egg shells that are sitting on the counter. So just keep in mind the order. It's not going to make or break your project and how it looks generally. It'll just make it easier for you and not have to go back and fix things.